This is Centered, where faith meets everyday life. Our hope is to invite you into a better story, a story where you're made new through Jesus, living with God-given purpose, and experiencing peace, joy, and freedom. Together, we'll explore what it means to keep Jesus at the center of where we live, work, and play, bringing beauty, meaning, and renewal to every part of our lives. Thank you for joining us. Here are your hosts, David and Ben.
Well, hello and welcome to Centered. Now, we've got three of us here today. We have a special guest. I'm here. David's here.
Hello.
And if you're on the YouTube, because it makes me sound younger.
YouTube.
You're probably sitting here going, that doesn't look like Freddy.
No.
This is not Freddy. We had a brilliant guest speaker on Sunday, Michele Williams. It was awesome. And this is not Freddy. This is Freddy's wife, Michele. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to be here. I'm excited.
I'm excited too. This is like my sister from another mister.
That's
This is
right.
like we're close.
Yeah.
It's like family. So it's good to have Michele
Thank you.
here.
Yeah, it's great. I today will be your third wheel.
You're the third wheel.
And I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah.
I'm actually a really good third wheel.
You're the best.
I tag along on dates.
Yeah.
I'm great.
You are the best.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's funny. Yeah, we probably should say like why we don't have Freddy on.
We should.
And I love the Williams so much. They've been through so much as a family together, and they've walked with my family through a lot of suffering and times that required endurance and faith and support. And just honestly, like Michele is the better half of the two. And so I was like, hey, we'll have Freddy speak,
Yes.
and then we'll get Michele to do the podcast. So
Brilliant.
I schemed it up from the very beginning.
Yeah, you get
Yes.
both.
Yeah, you get both.
I love it. I love it. It's great. Well, how are you guys doing today? That's the important question. You know, how is it's a Tuesday morning. We usually shoot in the afternoon. So I'm going to confess right now, I'm not a morning person.
Yeah.
So I'm going to need your guys' help. You're going to have to carry this morning as we shoot this podcast because I'm about 50% dumber until noon.
Okay. Good.
So, just full disclosure. So that's how I'm doing. How are you guys doing?
Good. I am a morning person, so this makes me happy.
Mhm.
And the sun's shining. It's been raining here, so
I do
I'm
love
so
that.
thankful. I'm thankful for the rain, but I'm so thankful that the sun shines back
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. It's nice.
Yeah.
I walked my dog this morning, and it was like fog.
Oh, yes.
It felt like Southern California, which is great. It was that
Oh,
like
and
you
it
couldn't, yeah. And
has to burn off.
And then the sun came out and the fog burned off, and it just reminded me of that.
Oh,
I
that's
am
cool.
also a morning person, and I'm doing great. Dude, I'm
insufferable.
ready to roll.
Mhm.
I'm ready
really
to
hard
jump
on
in,
this
bro.
game.
Come on.
I'm just sitting here. This is how dense I am. Ooh, another fog reference. This is how dense I am. I was like, oh, you're in the fog with your dog.
Oh,
Like that's
you're in the
that's how
fog
my
with your
brain's
dog.
functioning right now, guys.
Gotcha.
That's
Yeah.
it. That's
Okay.
all I've got.
Well, hey,
That's
take
all
Yeah.
I've got. But I'm excited for this episode. I'm excited to hear from Michele and just a little bit about your story. I think Freddy did a really brilliant job. I had met Freddy for all of like a minute
Mhm.
before Sunday. And after the message, I was like, I feel like I know Freddy. Like I
Yeah.
feel like
That's
I
cool.
know his story. Like we're friends. We're tight. He doesn't know anything about me, so he probably doesn't feel that way. But I thought he did a really great job
Yeah.
of not only like walking through the text and what suffering does in us and to us and for us, but he did a really good job of helping us connect with who he is and your guys' story. And so I thought like a really great place for us to kind of kick off. We usually do the cutting room floor, which we can drop that. There it is. And instead of the traditional like, hey, this didn't make it into the sermon, I would love for you to share a little bit about what didn't make it into the sermon, like from your perspective. You walked this, you lived this with Freddy. And so just love to hear a little bit about what that whole season of burnout and suffering and challenge and just some of your perspective on it.
Yeah. I think it was, I mean, I feel like when he spoke on this last Sunday, it was really awesome because I know that of him. And he has kind of been over these years, maybe just because he hasn't had a lot of the opportunity to like share where he's at and walked through, but also kind of the insecurity of like, man, I'm different. Whether it's just because of what he's walked through, and then he maybe felt like having to be the always not having it all together. He doesn't present himself like that, but just being like the strong, the strength, the oak. And when he was unable to be that for our family, it just brought this like insecurity and just kind of a new. He's always like, when I first met him, I mean, we grew up together is what I say. I met him when he was 18. I'm in college, and he was, you know, like so confident and just like everyone knew Freddy Williams, you know, type personality, and kind of above it all type. And it was until like when he walked through the burnout, and I kind of saw it coming. And so it was really difficult, I think, for any of this. Like Freddie and I talk about this freely, so it's not like I'm sharing his stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Glad he's
I'm not-
fully aware
he's
of
very
that.
aware of.
Yeah.
Don't let
And
Freddie
we-
watch
like,
this.
Right.
I just want to
Yeah.
stop, like
Yeah.
acknowledging that. Like I didn't know Freddie back then, but
Right.
I knew ministry Freddie in that
Yes.
way. And in school, he was a D1 athlete.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, could do a lot of people that a moderately sized white person couldn't do. You know, like normally could do. He could do a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
But even as a pastor, he was like that too. He was like the D1 athlete of like communicators and he was always creative and cultivating and curating space that was unique in the world. And so it was almost like he was like the Midas, you know, like everything he touched was kind of like
Gold.
you know,
Yeah.
ooh, you know,
Right.
and
That's so true.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that had to have been
Yeah.
hard to like watch him
Yeah.
go through a transition when it's not like that.
Yeah. It was really difficult. And I think watching him, I don't know, it was like bittersweet because there's a place with Freddie, like he is very intelligent. He knows the word, can communicate really well. And then, but I'm like, man, there was times that I'm like, man, I don't believe you. Like, and when he was speaking, or just like, you can teach me a ton of stuff or teach us a ton of stuff, but I'm like, I just don't believe you. Meaning, like, I just don't know if you know the Savior, Jesus, as a friend and deeply. And so it's just like, you can know a ton about God, but not deeply intimately know him. Yeah. And so walking through with him and watching him like burn out and then his stroke, which changed his personality a lot, to me it was very difficult to watch him experience it. And the challenges and changes of learning someone different and new, and him trying to figure that out himself. That was really difficult, but also like the goodness of God, just like the things I would hold close to my heart, just like Jesus just reminding me, like, I'm doing something really beautiful. Just hang on, just hang on, and just making space for that. And so, so that was, I think for me, in the quietness of walking with him, my greatest prayer for him that entire time was like, man, I pray that he knows the deep love and affection of Jesus more than he'll ever know and has ever known. And to this day, he does. And he has that intimacy, that personal intimacy with Jesus, which is transformative. And you guys got to experience him like how I experienced him.
Yeah.
Which was really beautiful, because that was like he mentioned he hadn't preached like on a stage in a congregation in a decade. And that was the first time I got to experience it. Like, I want people to know him like I know him.
Huh.
So
That was honestly the first time I had ever seen him preach like that. You know, vulnerable, present.
yeah.
Um, someone came up. This is always a backhanded compliment. I get this a lot too, and it's
Love
always
those.
like,
Yeah.
you know, it wasn't polished. You know,
Oh, yeah.
I love, which I
Yeah,
love. I
me
love
too.
that compliment.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love it because it represents what I believe is the heart of God to work through normal, ordinary humans. You know, in that, and he never got comments like that before. You know, ever, like
He was always
it was
polished.
always
Always.
polished, and it was
Yeah.
always so deep and intellectual and thoughtful, and but to see him show up as like a human was like
Yeah.
a very unique experience for me sitting in that
Interesting.
room.
That's cool.
And people felt
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and I know him, and it's like people felt that for some reason, and I don't know what that is.
Well, I did. I don't know him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, oh man, like there was a couple moments where I was like, I feel like he's like this is really raw and real. You
Yeah.
know, like even like he was talking about his dad, and I felt like, oh, he's I think he's getting choked up a little right now.
Yeah.
You know, and just
Yeah.
different stuff like that, where I was like, oh, this is like we're getting to see the real Freddy here, whatever that is.
Yeah.
You know, because like I said, not knowing him, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Can we talk about you said you saw the burnout coming.
Oh yeah.
I want to like what, and I'm sure you experienced that too, because
yeah.
when you're planting, it wasn't just Freddy, it was your family, your
Mhm.
family. Like where did you see that? How did that show up both for Freddy, and how did that show up for you?
I think when we planted, and it was a beautiful experience, but it was the hardest thing maybe not as hard as marriage, but I'll say the second thing, hardest thing I've ever done. But I think when our church plant kind of, there were some problems going on, and we did life with these people. Like our kids were growing up together, and I think just watching it kind of dissipate in a way, and I'm like, okay, something's not going well. Like Freddy can't, or we can't fix these things. And so I'm like, okay, well, it's kind of like, it looks like it's kind of going away. And so I saw Freddy, where he would have said that it was a failed attempt. And so like failure, and then spiraling from that. And so I saw him just like get like spiral, still continue to show up as much as he can, but just like spiraling into like, I am a failure. Did I make the wrong decision of leaving my last job to do this? And and so I would say that was like probably the biggest thing. I just kind of watched him just a little bit, like, kind of like actually dying slowly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's got to do something to you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me it was, I have experienced a lot of change in my life, and so I actually like it. I like the mystery of it, the adventure of it. But when I see Freddy's like, where I kind of, and this was like God working on me, is just like I kind of lived and breathed for Freddy, and like this codependency, and it was just like unraveling. And so I'm like, okay, I gotta really be strong and hold our family together.
Yeah.
And so I had to just kind of put where I was at to the side, because I had two young boys. We had two young boys at the time. I'm like, we got to do something, because I don't know if he's gonna survive this, because it got really, really dark.
Yeah.
So
Had to have been hard. So you went into like just survival.
Yeah. And which is like part of my story, and just like I've learned to survive through everything I've been through.
Yeah. You've been through a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to give a little like just snapshot of some of the
Sure.
things that you've like gone through and just your journey?
Yeah. I grew up in a dysfunctional home, and then senior year, I was at Columbine when during the shooting, and so that literally pivotal. It was a pivotal point in my life. And that's where I surrendered. Like a little bit after that, surrendered my life to Jesus, and just that experience. And right before that, I also experienced sexual assault, and so that was just like back to back. And then I just went in survival mode, and I was just like, okay, I'm have learned for survival to compartmentalize, and I've been unraveling that all these years, but I can compartmentalize. So I'm just like, I'll put this over here, put this over here. I got to forge forward, surviving for myself. So then I went to Liberty University, and that's when I really met like Jesus, and that was a Christian college, and I became a Christian. I remember at they had like a worship service or something for all the freshmen coming in, and I remember that was like the day I surrendered myself to Jesus, which was so cool. Wow. But like through that time, I've experienced a lot of like loss. So there was a few deaths that I experienced while I was on campus at Liberty, and then that's how I, like with Freddy, that's how we met. He experienced his two best friends were tragically killed in a car accident. Wow. That freshman year, fall semester. And so it's kind of like trauma bonding, because I just experienced a lot, and we were just really good friends, and so we just trauma bonded. Yeah. And then the rest is history. But so we just kind of, and then Freddy's stroke was really hard. Having to pick up our family, this is more recent, like pick up our family from a place we loved and our kids were growing and thriving, and then being like, okay, we have to do something. So I'm like, I can't do this life alone. And my family, I was like, I got to move back to Colorado to have some kind of support. Yeah. And so,
Thanks for sharing that. And it's been a rebuilding and unraveling.
Oh yeah.
Ever since.
Yeah. I think just like the unraveling of just what I've thought, and just like even like grieving. Like grieving, grief isn't only like through death. It's like you can grieve relationships that are still standing, just grieving just any type of loss. And so that's one thing that I've just learned to, what is it to, like, grief comes in waves too. So it's not always, it's almost a lot of times unexpected. You're like, I'm here again. Okay, but giving myself permission to be compassionate to myself, to be like, okay, let's just sit here just for the moment. Let's just talk it out. I have enough tools now. And then just letting it be and just moving forward with that. So yeah.
When Freddy, went through the burnout, the stroke, you kind of said like he became like a different person.
Yes.
And I'm sure some of that's like brain wiring and the stroke has effect and all that. Like, I'm curious or interested to know, like, how, like, did that feel like I lost Freddy, the Freddy I've always known, my husband, the father, my children, the guy that we were building this life together? I've lost this version of Freddy, and now I've got this other Freddy. Like I don't know if you could like just walk us through like how that felt. Or
no, that's a really good question. I do feel like I lost that piece of him, the guy I fell in love with, and kind of was building this life with. And he shared this, like, he just became a really, really angry person. And it came out with everything, whether it's driving or on the kids or, and so I just, and that kind of broke me, because I'm like, I don't know, and plus his stroke, which is also like, there was a lot of things that, I say it's, it was like having an individual, like an older, like he aged like
Like you're
years,
caretaking.
like I'm caretaking.
Yeah.
And I did. And for a very long time, and it was so frustrating. And I was just like, I'm falling apart, but trying to keep our boys, and trying to be there and teach them and walk them through it, and trying to be a wife plus working full time. So it just is like, it was a lot.
Wow.
But one thing that I have learned through like walking through a lot of suffering, and just like God continues to sustain me. Like he literally sustains me, where I'm like, I have nothing left, and I don't want to give anything more. And then he's just like, all right, well, here, you have enough for right now, for today, in the boundaries of today.
Yeah.
And so really resting in that. And then we got to a point where Freddy and I both were like coping, whether it's through alcohol or scrolling on our phone, like whatever, we were coping.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we can't do that. Like, this is bad. And so we, through a lot of, I've been in counseling for so long, in biblical counseling. And I was just like, I can't do this any longer. And so I don't know what to do. And that's when I asked him we needed to separate, because I needed him to work on, like, I couldn't be his everything any longer.
Yeah.
And it was almost like he would say, like, I was his God. And so,
Wow.
yeah.
That was a much needed season.
Yeah.
To meet Jesus again
Right.
in a new way.
Mm-hmm.
Is that when the shift happened?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not just taking, out of, not just Freddy taking responsibility for his own rehabilitation journey
Sure.
and all of that, but before you mention this difference between like knowing a lot about Jesus and then meeting him, is that where all that happened in that season? Could you walk us through that?
Sure. We, Freddy, he moved out, and so it was me and the boys, and I did everything, just kind of continued to make it as normal as possible. Right. It was really difficult, but I knew I made the right decision, because I needed my husband and my boys needed their dad. And so the shift where it was up into, I always say, like, God's the God of the 11th hour. Because it was like a 6-month separation. That was the plan. And we were doing our own work, and then we were in counseling together. And it literally was, I think it was like August or end of July to Christmas time that year. And so right before, I think it was after Thanksgiving and stuff, where I'm like, Freddy, like, things have to change, because we have to make a decision. We can't just continue like this lingering. Yeah. And he said that the thought of, he said, I had a thought one night. He was like, I'm about to lose everything, and I'm gonna have to move back to New York, and I'm about to lose everything. And that he said that was like the shift, and he literally was just like, that he came back to really have this intimacy with Jesus, and such beautiful voices in his life too. That God brought really strong men, you included, alongside him, and weren't just like telling him how good he is, or you're great, kind of thing like that. It's just like, because for me, it's just like I live more vulnerably. It's just like, I just am like, I'm going to just shoot it straight. Shoot me straight, I'll shoot you straight. Freddy is like, had been different in that way. And so I think that's where he's more emotional than I am, probably. And so I think for me, just like learning to communicate with him, just like I have to be a little bit more, sensitive, and just be like, man, just instead of just like come on, we gotta do this. It's just like, my voice was still there during that time, but men's voices that he respected and knew that, that they loved him deeply and loved us and were for us.
Yeah.
That was the pivotal moment for him and us.
Can I ask one more question?
Just one. No, I'm
Just
kidding.
one.
Of course. Yes.
No, I know you have. I'm so. It's funny because I was on one side of this conversation. You know, Freddy and I are. He's my best friend. You know, old people don't talk like that. You know what I mean? But he's legitimately like my best friend. And I was so mad at you guys when you guys were going through this. You know, like I legitimately was like, and I was mad at God. I was like it started to like chip away at like my faith a little bit, you know, when I saw something, people that I admire so much struggle.
Almost like on a pedestal.
Yeah, on a pedestal, this
they
family.
fall off the pedestal.
It was like,
what do we do?
Heck
What does this mean?
Yeah. What does this mean? Like, what are you doing, God? And, you know, and you try to be there for someone. But when was the moment that you knew, this isn't over? We're God's going to reconcile this and redeem this and bring it back together. Because there had to have been, both of you guys had to have those. I mean, you just told about Freddy's questions. I imagine you were thinking kind of like the same thing, like, maybe, you know, who knows? Like, maybe this is it. Maybe we're done.
Yeah.
And like, what was the catalyst to make you go, God actually wants to redeem this and bring it back together?
I think there was a moment at the end, like closer to our end of our 6 months or whatever. And I was talking to, I had 2 different counselors at the time. And one was just kind of like, okay, well, you guys have done all this work for the 6 months. And it's like, you can linger and continue on separated, or you can move forward and try. And I'm like, oh, I don't know what to do. I want to backtrack a little bit. God's placed, I call them my grandma group. And it's like these ladies who are all grandmothers and just have lived a lot of life. And they walked with me this whole time. And one of them, she always tells me this, even to this day, she's like, Michele, you know God's voice, listen to his voice. You're going to have a lot of chatter telling people, you know, people telling you or family saying like, this isn't going to work. Why are you going to do this? You know, she just always reminded me like, you know, God's voice, listen to that. And so fast forward to this moment, when I was in one of my counseling appointments, he asked me, he's just like, what are you afraid of? And I was like, I'm afraid that it's not going to work and we're going to have to walk through this again. He's like, but what if it does? What if it does work? What if God does want to redeem this? And what if he will? And I was like, well, yeah. But he said, but what if you get into it and it doesn't work out? What happens? Well, we just end up kind of where we're at. And he's like, and you might move on and just have to let go of that. But you won't know unless you step foot into it and have that courage. And so it just like deepened my courage and just like, I'm going to give it a shot. All right, God, I'm going to hold you to your promises. You say in the Bible that you are a God of redemption and restoration. And I'm holding you to that. And I did. And I'm thankful I did.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's the soundbite of the century.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah. No, that's amazing.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Man, thanks for sharing all of that. And you know, we like to take a lot of hard left turns on the podcast. So from like deep and talk about your pain and suffering to a segment we like to call Just for Funsies.
Just for funsies.
Yeah.
Makes sense, right?
Just for fun.
Yeah,
We
just
need
for
it.
fun.
We need a little.
some fun.
Light it up a little.
Yes.
Light it up a little.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was thinking about Freddy talked about how he's preached this passage as a 24-year-old and a 44-year-old, right? And just how it's like so different. So I was thinking, what advice would we give to our 24-year-old self? Now, I think I would, because it's just for funsies, like I'd love to have, we can have a serious one. We should, but maybe just something funny, nonsense, whatever.
Yeah.
And so just to give you guys a moment to think about your advice, I'll start with mine.
Okay.
And so what I said is, we already talked about this, actually. This is kind of ironic now. You're not a morning person. Like, don't try to be. Don't, like, I worked in the corporate world for a number of years. I had the kind of job, like, you're in the office by 7, shirt and tie, and like, you're not that guy. Like, don't try to be that guy. Just be you. And sometimes you have, look, I had, family, we're building a family, I got little kids, I got to support, like, yes, do the things you need to do, but like, understand who you are. Don't try to be a morning person. Don't try to be just who you're not. Because I am not a morning person. So that's like the lighter version. I think the more like serious advice I would give to myself is like, learn to deal with your emotions. I've spent, I don't know, my wife would probably know, like, the day, like, but like, I've spent probably the better part of, I don't know, 12 years moving from like growing up in an environment where it's like, your dad's like, hey, why are you crying? I'll give you a reason to cry. We bury them under this rug. We don't talk about emotions. We don't deal with emotions. That's what a man is,
Dang.
And to then learning, it's essential to like my relationships, to my own like just well-being and thriving, to actually like look at the things that are happening inside of me, why they're happening, and how to deal with them, and how to have a conversation about them and not feel insecure or stupid or weak because I have feelings. And so that's probably like I wish I would have like started that journey way earlier than I actually did. So that'd be my more
that's good.
serious one.
Good.
That's really good. You want me to go?
Yeah, you got one?
I would say my 24-year-old self, don't stop having fun. Be childlike. Life
I like
is
that one.
Yeah. I'm just like, I've always been like, I remember myself back then. I'm like, it was just so fun and light, even though we were going through hard things, but it's just like, just have fun and be light and don't take things so seriously. So that would be my biggest one. Just, be childlike. It's actually an invitation from Jesus. And then my more serious one would be, it's going to be okay. You're going to be okay.
Yeah, that's good. Love that. Yeah, my not serious one, I would tell my 24-year-old self, you're an idiot.
Yes.
You're an idiot.
That's awesome.
You're just an idiot. Like you, yeah. And it's okay. Like I like
at
more
24,
like
or always like
your brain is like barely
developing.
Just developed. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like your frontal lobe is like just starting to come in. Like
sorry to all our under 25 listeners.
And it's legitimately like it's
Just,
okay.
like,
Like it's okay.
yeah.
Like you're an
Yeah.
idiot. It's okay.
Yeah.
Like don't put too much pressure.
Yeah.
So
that's
and
good.
I think I think in the serious bit of that is life's a journey. You don't have to have everything all worked out. And I think when I started following Jesus seriously, Tara and I, about that time. Like we both like had come through some pretty rough times and gave our lives to the Lord and got called into ministry and all of that, like right around that time. And I think I was so caught up for so many years about the destination that I lost the beauty of the journey. You know, like there were so many things, like the outcomes matter way less than we think. Like we're so
Yeah.
fixated on outcomes, and if we could just focus more on the journey, we would experience way less disappointment.
Mm,
Yeah.
dang.
That's, I mean,
Noted.
yeah, it's like simple, but like hard. Yeah. You
Really
know?
hard.
Yeah.
Really
yeah.
hard.
Because we like the American way, right? We're taught to have goals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like that literally is all about outcomes.
Mhm.
And so if you don't have a goal, you'll hit it. You know, that's like
Yeah.
the adage that all my like boomer mentors would like impress on me. You know, like if you don't have a goal, you'll hit it. If you don't have a target, you'll hit it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, whatever that like
Love
whole
that
adage.
shit.
And I'm just like,
Yeah.
okay, so goals are vital.
Mhm.
But
Outcomes aren't everything, you
They're
know.
not everything.
And
That's
what's funny
good.
is we can get desired outcomes and still miss the heart of Jesus and God.
Mhm.
And as church leaders,
Mhm.
like we can hit the number outcomes, we can hit the fundraising outcome, we can hit all of the goals that we put into place and still miss Jesus and all of it. And that's just I'm still learning that.
Oh my gosh,
you know,
me too.
At 49. So that's
That's good.
Mhm.
that's a big one.
Wow.
All right. That was fun. Thank you. Appreciate it, guys. Let's I like to talk about the things that I hear in the message. I enjoy kind of unpacking it. And so one of the things that Freddy said that like really stood out to me was he said, the only way lasting change takes place is through pain and suffering. And he kind of hedged it a little. Like he was like, I think like, you know, I'm really close to believing this, you know, like biblically
true.
speaking.
Yeah.
So he didn't make it like an absolute, but it really forced me to think. I'm like, oh, okay, do I believe that? Is that consistent with my experience in life? Are there ways that you can grow without pain and suffering? And I don't have like a solid answer, but I did think like one of the things that I've kind of believed in my life is like, if there's such a thing as a human superpower, it would be to be able to learn from other people's mistakes and misfortunes as opposed to experiencing it yourself. And so I've tried to do that in terms of just like, you know, it's why I've never done any kind of drug, because I like was able to see, and of course, you know, dare. I mean, that was a big thing, you know. But you know,
Yeah,
just saying no to drugs, you know.
Yeah.
But aside from that, you know, just being able to see the effects of it on others and go, that's not for me. But so I was like, oh, maybe you can learn without it. But then I was like, but there is still pain and suffering. I'm learning from the pain and suffering of others.
Mm-hmm.
So
Interesting.
I was just curious, you know, do we really believe that is essential to lasting, like sustainable growth in our lives?
I would say like just off the cuff. I would say we have to I definitely think we can learn from other people's stories and like take note and just like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to walk through that. Thank you. But also I think too, I always, nature to me is like, I see God in everything through nature. And so like, I think of just say trees, like trees are growing, the leaves are on there, those particular leaves are on there for a season. Then they beautifully color out and then they fall off and die. And so just like thinking of like the regrowth of just like dormancy, that's the death of plants and trees and stuff through winter. And then, but it doesn't stop. It's doing something, producing something within that period of death and dormancy. And so, and then something beautiful comes, we know that. So I would say like for me individually, I've had to walk through some things because now I believe like everything is not wasted. It's not wasted. Right. And so would I rather have had to learn from other people? Yeah.
For sure.
I definitely, because it wouldn't, but also I think, again, that's like the human depravity, right? And so that's where Jesus is like, okay, let me show you. Let me be your savior in this. Let me, his majesty and glory get to outshine everything. So I think that's what I would say for me. Just
That's exactly where my mind goes. You know, I would unequivocally say, yes, you have to suffer to change. And I think you can avoid pain from other people's mistakes, but I don't think you can become something beautiful, filled with depth, filled with wisdom, without experience, without hard experience. I don't. And I that's Jesus, like, man, a kernel of wheat has to fall to the ground and die, you know, to get the harvest. And so if we do want to bear the fruit of the kingdom, at some level, we have to suffer and identify with Christ's suffering. And for me, I've experienced the physical suffering, but for me, it's usually more about my identity. You know, like laying down something that's hard for me, or something being exposed that's in me that I don't want. The pain of relational strain, like something has to happen to be a catalyst for real change in my life. And I just think that's not, and here I'm going to say something pretty controversial.
Ooh.
I don't think that's just because of sin.
right.
Like,
I agree.
I think
In the garden?
I think in the garden there was a sense of effort and work that had to be done in order for people to experience the fullness of the world that God created for them, and to expand the boundaries of the garden and all of that. And so, yeah, I know we have this thing. Yes, pain and suffering entered in the world because of sin, like nothing else. But change comes through effort. And so Adam and Eve had to work to cultivate the garden. They had to put effort into changing the boundaries of the garden and untapping the hidden potential of the garden and all of that stuff. And I think as a culture, we just want comfort and ease. And so we avoid, which is kind of like, I don't want to become a drug addict, so I'm going to avoid that. But when we think about what does it take to become a person of compassion or mercy or humility or integrity, like what does it take to like become those things? And I'm like, I don't think there's any other way other than like some sort of discipline, pain, suffering, to become that. And that's my
No, it's so good.
It's good. And, I mean, I would say the most important work I've done in my life is through pain and suffering. Avoidance is one thing, and like learning from other people's mistakes, that can be really helpful. But like the deepest work,
is pain. But interestingly enough, the change that's happened to me most in my life is the pain that I've caused others, which is another strange, thing. It's like I can pain to myself or whatever, I can kind of just sweep under the rug, hide, but it's usually when my sin spills out on others and I hurt someone else that I'm most exposed to the need for change or whatever. And so that's
so
kind
good.
of a weird phenomenon too,
You think is that related to just a different kind of shame that you feel from hurting others as opposed to self hurt? I don't know. It is really interesting how that works. Another one. I thought Freddy gave a really good cultural exegesis of the times that we live in, and actually. I was going to say Freddy gave the quote. Technically, David gave the quote, which was, hard times make strong men make good times make weak men. And so there's this cycle, right? And so we live in this society, you just touched on it, right? Where we like comfort and ease. And man, I mean, you look at the technological advances, there are people who really believe we're headed towards a utopia because of technology and the advancements in medicine and all of those things. And so what I heard in that and what I see in that is like, we are doing everything we can as a culture to avoid pain, to avoid suffering, and to help those that we love, our kids or our families, to avoid pain, to avoid suffering. And we might be short-circuiting what God's trying to do in that process. And so I was just kind of curious, like, your guys' thoughts on, do you feel like, yeah, I do this all the time, or I see it in culture, and like, what I don't know, how do we respond to it?
I would say, I mean, I'm definitely guilty of it. I mean, who doesn't like comfort?
Preach.
and
I know, it's kind of an obvious question.
I'm just like, I mean, I really do. And there are times, I mean, I would like to avoid it at all costs.
Yeah.
But again, we know, like scripture says, Jesus says, we will endure suffering. And to me, that draws me closer to him. But in the culture, raising with our story, just like raising our boys, is just, we always tell them, like, you can do hard things. Like, you can do hard things. We can do hard things. And which I am thankful that I hated that we had to walk through that with our family, our boys. But man, are they some incredible young men. Resilient.
Yeah.
And I hated that they had to go through that. But there was no like covering it up and trying to make it comfortable. At all.
Right. How do you cut? Like,
you can't
cover that.
No. But culture, I mean, we have everything at our fingertips. We can, like, I could order something from Amazon, a book from Amazon, and it would be here before I leave. You know, so like,
or
you
if
just
it's Kindle,
have to,
it'll
that's
be
true.
there
That's true.
right? Even more.
Yeah. So it's just like, we have everything at our, and we know the life of Jesus. We know it's slow and intentional. It is not fast. It is not fast. Going through suffering, not fast. You better buckle up and just have the endurance to be, it's going to be slow, but it's going to be intentional. And but the culture, I think that is the friction of, like, as a follower of Jesus, the friction is just like, man, I want comfort. And Jesus is like, I am comfort. No, I want it like right now. I want to feel the comfort. And Jesus is like, oh yeah, I am the comfort, but I don't feel it right now.
Oh, like, that's good.
You know,
That he is the comfort,
He's
as
the
opposed to the book on Amazon or the instant gratification
anything.
of whatever we're seeking in the moment. To instead like shift our gaze to, he is the comfort. That's really good.
Yeah.
So good. I watched your boys, like, in that season find their own voice, which was really cool. Like, and I talk about learning about parenting, and, like, we talked about this actually a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
About, like, allowing our boys to suffer so that they can, come into their own, come into their own, personhood and manhood and all of that. And I watched your boys do that in real time, having hard conversations, fighing, you know what I mean? Like, yelling at you guys and, like, doing the whole thing. And you guys handled it so well. Like, you guys didn't squash it. You actually, like, honored the process of your scout and rider becoming young men through suffering, through your, like, because they experienced the suffering too.
Sure.
And they got to, I just remember Freddy walking me through a couple of, table conversations, and I'm like,
talk.
he said that to you, and he's like, oh yeah,
he sure did.
like, I was like, whoa, and I, he was, how old was Scout in that? It was like,
I don't know,
14?
No, younger than that.
13? Yeah, and I'm just like, wow,
middle school and elementary.
Yeah, it was cool. So, yeah, I agree. I think that we allow softness to get in the way. The scary part to me is when you read the Bible, this seems to be a pattern with God's people. And it's like the cycle just continues of, like, comfort. Then you forget God, try to live in your own strength, fall into sin and apathy and all that. God has to bring suffering in order to redirect us back to God, and then they come back to God, and then it's just like the cycle. And so I think in America right now, I think we're in that cycle of where, like, God's readjusting. He's he's bringing a little discomfort. And I think we had it with the pandemic and
Mhm.
politics and,
Mhm.
you know, economics and all of those things. We're experiencing the uncertainty of the things we've built our lives on. And that is causing, I think, a new generation of people to turn back to God. And so
Yeah.
I just think that's going to be the
Yes.
cycle until
Yeah.
Jesus comes back, you
Mhm.
know, like, and we need to find it in our own lives
Mm-hmm.
somehow. Like, hey, where am I
Mm.
giving into
Mm.
comfort
Yeah.
and missing out on God? You
Mhm.
know, I don't know.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite passages growing up was just where Jesus says, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Like, cast
Mhm.
your cares on me.
Mm.
And I didn't even really understand it, you know, at like 10, 12, whatever, you know. But the idea that I could just give all my stuff to Jesus
Mhm.
and that my, like, the weight would be lighter.
not
And-
absent though.
Not
The
absent.
Yeah.
yoke is still there.
Yeah,
you
there's-
know? It's
feel that
still-
way.
There's still effort, right?
Mhm.
Required, like going back to that, like maybe even in the garden, but there's still
Mhm.
effort, right? But it's lighter
Mhm.
because you have Jesus walking with you
Yeah.
and carrying the majority of the load.
That reminds me of I think it's Mark 4, and it's, you know, it's the story of when Jesus is on the boat with his disciples and that huge storm comes, like this huge squall.
Mhm,
And Jesus is just sleeping, you know? And I just imagine, like, I was like, through storms, I'm just like, Jesus, like, what, you're sleeping?
Yeah.
What are you
Get
doing?
up.
Get up. And I could just imagine, like, he was like in this deep sleep and it's just like, guys, like, for real? Like, you don't have where's your faith?
Yeah.
Just, he walks up the stairs or whatever. I don't know if there were stairs on the boat, but just say, and he just said, quiet, and the storm just hushes. And then I can imagine him just be like, I'm going back to bed.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like I want to learn to, as I walk through more storms in my life, I know, to be that in that peace.
Yeah.
Like, just,
Mm.
you know, we're just like, you guys, like, for
Mm.
real? I mean,
Yeah. But you've alluded to it a couple of times already. You have to know the God of our promises. Like, you have to
Mhm.
know.
oh my
him.
gosh.
And you have to
yes.
know his promises.
Mm-hmm.
You have to,
Right.
and you somehow you have to like, man, just cling to
Yeah.
the character and nature of who God is and what he promises us,
Mhm.
and trust that with all your heart.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
and like, I love that. You're like, oh, well, we have a God who redeems things. I
Yeah.
just have to believe that right now. I don't
Mhm.
see it. I don't know how it's
I
going to happen.
don't feel it.
We're in
yeah.
the storm. We have a God who calms the storms with a
Mhm.
word.
Mhm.
I have to believe that right now.
Yep.
Mhm.
I don't see it. I don't
Mhm.
feel it. Everything
Mhm.
inside of my body, fight or flight type of thing is
Yeah.
going on.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
But I have to believe in God's promises.
Mhm.
And yeah, I love that. That's what you learned. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And you saw it firsthand. Like, you're
I
like,
did.
oh, okay, he did
Yeah.
it. You know?
He did. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So I hold him to his promises.
Mhm.
That's good. All right. I think it's time for your low-key obsession, David.
Let him cook. It's time for David's low-key obsession.
Oh yeah.
Young adults.
Young adults.
We're launching a summer experiment. And so we don't make
Experiment.
changes around here,
Okay.
Michelle.
No.
We
Oh,
only do
you don't.
experiments.
Changes
Okay.
are scary.
Yeah,
Experiments
changes are scary.
fun.
Experiments are fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Who doesn't
what we
love
do.
a good experiment?
Yeah, we don't change things, but we are creating
Let's keep things
space
comfortable.
for young adults ages 18 to 24, 25 to just we're trying to create safe space for them to
That's
explore
cool.
God, meet one another, connect, and see what God does here at Mosaic. And so super excited about that. We got leaders in place.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
We're not letting the cat out.
I'm not letting the cat out of the bag, but we
Poor
got
cat.
some great
He's
leaders
stuck in that bag.
that we are excited to be able to just partner with and walk alongside them as they, just cultivate this space for young adults.
Yeah.
So
Cool. Is that launched this summer?
we launched June 10th.
Oh, cool.
It'll go through August 12th. It's just a summer space. And really, this is going to be a time that we get to hear from young adults.
Mhm.
What do they need? What's going on in
That's
life? How do
awesome.
we walk alongside of them? And what would they like to see happen in the church?
Mhm.
You know, that represents
That's
them
so
and
good.
helps give them
Yeah.
a voice.
Well, and it admittedly has been a gap
Here.
for us here.
For sure.
Mhm.
You know, I think it's a gap in a lot of churches.
I do too.
Quite honestly,
Mhm.
But, you know, typically young adults don't bring funding. You know, isn't that a lot of times how the church functions? Like, you know, like, well, what's the return?
Who's paying the bills?
What's the return on a young adults ministry? It's very low. But we're not like, we shouldn't be limited to thinking about a spreadsheet in terms of the return. The return is huge because you're cultivating in young people a heart for the things of God and the kingdom. And what does the church look like when we have a group of 18 to 24-year-olds just like activated? It's game changing.
That's going to be so cool.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting.
It's good. All right, so to kind of land the plane, if we would, Freddy said something. He asked the question, like, what do we do with our pain? And I thought this was hilarious. I'm sitting in the service, and someone behind me says, "Eat." I was like, because I was
sometimes
I didn't want to like laugh out loud. I was like, like that kind of thing. But so like, how do we do this in real life, man? Pain is real. We all experience it. Like, what do we do with our pain? How do we navigate this stuff in real life?
That's good. I would say have good people around you. You cannot do it alone. I would say that would be probably one of the have trusted voices, and who just continue to point you back to Jesus, but make space for all of it. Your anger, your sadness, like they're not trying to fix you,
right?
You know, and so I would
cut you off from feeling things that like, well, you're a Christian, you shouldn't feel that way.
I'm like, okay,
well, I do.
Yeah. So I would say
that's good.
That would be a big thing.
Yeah, that's
good.
Really good. Yeah. What do you think, David?
Oh, so much.
There's a lot.
Yeah. You know, at some way, shape, or form, there has to be a moment where you stop running and you just give yourself over to the season. And I don't like good. In real life, I don't know what that looks like. I think therapy, like having good biblical counseling that we can just like sit in the pain with others is good. Having friends who love you and who don't try to fix you are beautiful, because it gives you the safety to be able to go on that hard journey of just sitting in your pain. But somehow we have to learn how to embrace it. And you know, God, over and over again, you know, God says things like, "I'll work all things for the good of those who love me."
Right.
It was called according to my purpose, even this. And then, you know, we get the courage of like, Daniel or Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace of like, even if my God doesn't show up,
even if he doesn't, that's the craziest part.
I know he's going to do something like good and use this for my good and his glory. And man, we never get to see the faithfulness of God until we just sit in the difficulties and the pain. If we're constantly trying to run from it or hide from it, we're never going to get to see God be faithful and come through. And that's where a lot of, I think, people don't experience breakthrough is because they try to avoid the pain, the storm, or they try to numb themselves from it instead of sitting in it. And that's much easier said than done.
Oh my gosh.
Like I know that sounds so like, oh, just do this. And that's not my heart at all. Cause it's like, I still run from my pain. I still hide. I still hide all the time from places of pain in my life. But like, as we're sitting here, I'm like, man, there's probably some things in my own life that I need to sit in a little better and allow God to meet me there. And, you know, God delights to meet us in our brokenness.
Yeah.
He does. But it's so scary and dark and not fun, you know, that we usually don't do it. And so,
Well, yeah, and I think like to that end, I think a lot about trust. Like just trusting God, you know, whether it's knowing his promises and trusting him to be faithful in that, or like, you know, the older I get, what's great is I have this ability to reflect back on past suffering and see how God did show up and how God has been faithful. And so having that life experience helps me today when I experience those things. And no, it's still like to your point, not easy. Like I still run from it. I still I need God to remind me of who he is and that he's trustworthy and good. And to like be able to lean into it and walk through that. But I find that really helpful.
I wanted to say one more thing too, just on all of this. One thing I'm currently learning, and it's probably one of the most vulnerable things that God is really doing in me is just like, Michelle, I don't think you really know how much I love you. I don't think you know how much I love you. Because I'm, whether it's living out a performance or, for those goals or just like literally just learning, just like, Michelle, I love you. Now live out of that.
Yeah.
Just being a beloved daughter and just living out of that. And I think operating out of being already loved will be life-changing. And I'm just at the dust of it right now. So, I'm just learning.
Well, we probably don't have time to get in this. We don't have time to get in this subject. But it's like we have this bad theology where when we're going through suffering, we're thinking God's judging us or his.
I'm in sin.
Yeah. I'm in sin and he's punishing us or doing that. And it's just couldn't be farther from the truth. Like God even allows us to experience storms because he loves us.
Yes.
So much. Like, and we don't we're like, what do I do with that? How does that work? But I know you're Freddy's intimacy with the Lord. Like I never would have chosen your guys' story for you guys.
Yeah.
But I am so glad it happened because I get to experience the refined Michelle and the refined Freddy that is so wise and so loving and patient and kind because of the pain, It's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for sharing with us.
Yeah. Sincerely, thank you. Like the vulnerability and the just willingness to share your story. I think it's gonna make an impact on people.
Yeah.
And so thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
For doing that and for being here and taking day one of your sabbatical.
Yes,
back. No, definitely appreciate that. So guys, give her some love in the comments and we would love to know, hear from you, how their story is impacting you or, how you're walking through suffering, any of it and all of it. We'd love to hear from you.
And we'll bring them back.
And
we'll bring them back. So I
awesome.
think, I think we're gonna
Awesome.
we have new friends at Mosaic, which is cool.
Oh,
It's good to have friends.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's good to have friends.
Yeah. So David, what's up for next?
Man, we're
week?
starting a series called The OGs.
The
and
OGs.
We're diving into the Old Testament all summer.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Which I'm really excited about. And I'm kicking off with Judges, and I'm starting with Deborah, who she was just the only judge who comes to Israel out of spiritual strength without any moral or character flaw. She's like the only judge in all of the judges that God sends to Israel that actually is operating on all cylinders when it comes to faith in God. And I'm excited to be able to share her story and just talk about what we learned from her. And my whole thing is I have 5 things of when the church acts like the church. These 5 things will be characteristics of the church. And so we get to learn that from Deborah. And she's just an amazing character and really teaches us a lot about the heart of God and what God wants to do in the church.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm for it. That'd be
too.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, thanks everyone for listening, watching. Help us out. We need your help.
Likes,
Shares. Subscribes, shares, ratings and reviews, all the stuff. We love you. We're appreciative of you, and have a great week.
See you next week.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Centered. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a friend. You can listen to Centered on your favorite podcast platform or watch on YouTube. To learn more about Mosaic or connect further, visit us online at welcometomosaic.com. See you next week.